Hey, welcome back to True-Moto-Resto. In this video, we're going to start the reassembly of the CB900F, put in some new steering stem bearings, get the frame remounted onto the engine, swing arm and all that kind of good stuff. See how far we get. Stay tuned. All right, so the first things I'm going to do today is put new steering stem bearings in. These are the old ones. Pop them out. They're pretty simple to remove when they're kind of sitting in here. What I use is, this is like a pry bar, and it works well because it kind of has that bent tip on it, so it's very easy to kind of insert inside. Then you kind of hit one side of that bearing race, and then you can turn it around, and 180 degrees away you can hit the other side and just keep moving it back and forth, and then just basically these things just pop right out. Same thing with the bottom one, just going to insert it from the top and then bang it out that way. Works really well. And then what I typically do is I'll use these to reseat the new one. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So basically there's the new race. It's going to seat right in there. Make sure you put these the right way around. So obviously you want to put them in the way they came out, with the chamfered race facing out. And I'm just basically setting the old one right on top. And I want to try to seat it squarely. So I just keep looking to make sure that they're going down evenly on each side. Take a look, see, make sure it's going in square. It's going in square. Actually, you'll hear the sound and the feel of it will change when it bottoms out in the frame. Like that. We'll do the underside. This one is a little larger in diameter. So we're going to seat it just the same. There. She's now in. The other thing I now need to do is, there's obviously the actual bearings and the dust covers themselves are still here, and these obviously go on the steering stem, but I'm going to come back and do that part a little bit later, because I wanted to do this first because I want to put the frame back on the engine, and I don't want to be banging away at this thing when everything's kind of more precariously balanced. It's just easier to deal with it when it's sitting there on the floor, and if things move around, it's not a big deal. I put some never sees on this shaft as well before I put it in here, so let's get the cotter pin in here. All right, so basically I'm just retracing my steps, whatever I did to disassemble everything and remove everything. I'm now following exactly the reverse process. You can deviate a little bit here and there, but I just find I run into fewer problems if I just kind of retrace my steps. Like you could debate, it'd probably be easier to leave the center stand off until I get the frame on the bike, but that's the way I took it off, so that's the way it's going back on. And engine mounts are back on there. So next step is to get this repositioned over the engine, which I'll need another set of hands for, and then we'll get some of the engine mounting bolts inserted to hold it in place. Okay, so I decided to go ahead and do the steering stem bearings right away. Just while I'm waiting for an extra set of hands to put the frame back on the engine. So I always like to keep everything laid out in the order that it came off. So easy to do. First, second, third, fourth, blah, blah, blah. Everything kind of goes back on the same way. This steering stem is a little bit different than I've typically seen before. It looks like it's got a pinch bolt here for keeping the actual stem into the lower triple clamp, which is interesting. I've never seen that. These have always been pressed in the ones that I've done before. So it'll be interesting to see if this, when I start driving this bearing off, if this actually wants to move out of the pinch clamp here. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a cold chisel and a hammer. I'm going to put this in the vise and then basically going to hit it here and drive that bearing off. I've been beating the tar out of this inner race for a while. Everything's all this stuff around the main triple clamp is fine, but I cannot get this inner race off. I put this in my press. This has been loosened off. I put this in the press trying to push out the stem, but it didn't come out. Even though this is loosened off, and I was hesitant to put too much pressure on it for fear of bending the triple clamp. So I'm still trying to get this inner race off. This is the toughest one I've ever had to get off. So my next course of action is I'm using the Dremel to basically zip cut through that inner race. I'm hoping to split it to get it off, but I got to be very, very, very careful. Because I really do not want to make contact with the spindle. All right, so after a few minutes here, chipping away at this thing with the Dremel tool, I just took it really, really gradually, and I did not cut the spindle at all. And once I got down really close to the bottom of the race, cutting through it, it basically just I just heard a snap, and it basically split. You can see a really, really thin line there. That's not where I cut through. I cut through on this side here, and then it just popped with the pressure. So that's what brought it off. So holy cow. That was that's the toughest one I've ever had to take off. All right, so before I start pounding this new bearing on here, I'm going to put the rubber seal, the rubber lip on this faces up. The idea behind that is it's basically protecting the underside of the bearing from water and debris from the bottom side. So before I put this on, I'm gonna pack it with grease because you really can't pack it effectively once it's on the steering stem, I don't think. So this is just how I do it. There may be other ways, there may be better ways. So I basically have a pile of grease in my hand, and I'm just going to go around with the bearing and just start pushing it in from the bottom, because there's a bigger opening on the bottom, and then once it starts coming out of the top, then I know it's packed. So this is basically, you're just going to scoop it and push it in. Okay. It's my wife telling me she's going to get groceries. So then once you got it all from your hand, then typically you're only going to end up having to pull it all back out of the center of the bearing. And then you're going to do it again. All right, so the bearing has been packed with grease. You kind of see it starting to come out of the top, and all I've done at this point is kind of just drop it over top of the spline shaft. Next is I'm going to take the old bearing race. I'm just going to give that a bit of a wipe so I don't get any bits of shite everywhere, and then I'm going to use this upside down to drive the new bearing onto the shaft. And the good thing is about the fact that I split this is that it's not going to get stuck on there. Now the downside to this one is I really fucked up the edge of the race here, so I'm going to have to be careful to kind of keep turning it around, I think, just to keep it going on straight, because it just kind of shattered the edge trying to get it off. So not ideal, but this is what I have to work with. I knew it was going to be that big of a problem in the first place, I would have cut it right away. There we are. We have her snug right down. So that bugger of a job is now done. And of course I have to wait with putting the smaller bearing, which just kind of fits on the top that way, until we go to remount the triple clamps later on. So if you want to rejuvenate any of your faded black plastics off the bike, what I use is this stuff. It's from Clean Flow. It's I guess it's called Rubber Care, vinyl and rubber care. I buy this at Canadian Tire in Canada. It's available at a lot of different auto parts stores. But the stuff works really well. You can see right there, that's what it's called. And basically you just spray it on and leave it. Let it soak in. Sometimes you need to give it a few coats. This one, I've treated this one now a couple of times. It was really badly faded. And then you give it a couple of coats of this, let it sit for a few days. Any residue you can just wipe it off, and then it'll polish up like new. So I've also cleaned up the gauge cluster, clocks, whatever you want to call them. These are kind of gross, but they cleaned up well. All the screws were missing. All these mounting screws here that hold the top and the bottom of the cluster together. So I got a set of 4 new ones from CMS&L. So new bulbs in there. Everything cleaned up, back together with new screws, so that'll be ready to go back on. Okay, so the left side foot peg hanger is back on, swing arm is back on, chain is on, sprocket cover, chain guard are all back on. Pretty straightforward so far. Before I can go any further, on this side I've got to clean all this stuff up. I got to disassemble this rear caliper and the foot peg hanger, and there's a bit of a mess. That foot peg bracket has to be painted, so I got a bit of cleanup and work to do. All right, so this is the rear brake master cylinder. So it was, well, it's like all the brakes on this, it was completely pooched. So I've got it apart. It's been really dirty. Behind this rubber boot was all of this. So obviously it had been leaking for some time. So I've disassembled it, and it's going to need some new seals for sure. I guess there's two here have to be replaced, and then I'll have to take a look inside there and see how that. What I can see so far, it doesn't look too worn or anything in there. It's just really dirty. So I think what I'll end up doing, I'll order a new seal kit for the master cylinder. We'll take off the reservoir hose, disassemble it, and maybe put it in the ultrasonic cleaner. And while I'm waiting for that stuff, we'll get this rear brake caliper apart as well. Because if it's like the front ones, it'll be in pretty bad shape. I bought new pistons for the front ones, and I don't think I need new pistons for this one, but it's if it's been, they've been sitting for a long time, so we'll disassemble it and give it a thorough cleaning, and then we'll repaint everything. All right, so master cylinder for the rear brake is apart. And I started to disassemble the caliper for the rear brake. However, I can't get the pistons out. I've tried compressed air. I've tried my piston pullers for calipers, and I managed to get them to move like a little bit rotationally. Couldn't get them to come out, so then I decided to compress them a little bit first, and then since I did that, they won't move at all. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to continue to soak these in penetrating oils, and then once I get the rear master cylinder rebuilt, I'm going to have to hook everything back up, and then use the hydraulic pressure to push these things out, and then disassemble them again to get those pistons out, because I want to clean inside here and ultrasonically clean the calipers. So I'm going to have to go the long way around that, I think. Because if I start, I mean, I did put some pliers on here, and I could get some rotation, but the problem with that is it just starts to chew up the edge of the pistons if you do that too much. So can't afford to do that. All right, first wheel bearing is being replaced. Interesting thing about the CB900, I guess probably the CB1100, CBX, and others, they have this bearing retainer, which you need this tool to remove. So I removed that, and then took out drove out both of the old bearings. They're the originals by the looks of it, and then putting in these new ones. And the odd thing is that on the front wheel, the bearing retainer is different to the rear wheel, so you need a different tool, or in this case I just used a screwdriver and a hammer. And then in their infinite wisdom, Honda made a third and different retainer for the push drive. So this looks the same as the other one, except these are spaced further apart. So you actually need 3 different tools to do the rear wheel bearings. So now I got to buy a third tool. Well, I got to buy a second tool because I got that one off the old-fashioned way with a screwdriver. So yeah, this one does not fit the push drive. You can probably tell from that the it just doesn't line up. you get one of the this peg is in the in that hole, but you know, it's a good 1 centimeter difference in diameter. All right, so the rear shocks are getting ready to get reattached to the swing arm. So what have I done on here? Basically, I cleaned and I polished all the aluminum ribs here, and I cleaned and polished the tops here a little bit. I repainted the bottom section and the top, clear coated everything to protect the aluminum that I polished, and just give them a general cleaning. So I also still have to put on new stickers around here. I have those still to go on. So yeah, it's starting to look pretty decent. The wheels and everything, I've got new bearings in there. All right, so I think that's going to be about it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. In the next video, we'll get to doing the front fork rebuild, master cylinder, calipers, and that kind of stuff, and hopefully make some more progress.